Okay, only 2 people raised their hands. Anyone else? Okay, not many of you have gone through, I think. Only three of them have raising. Fine. First of all, what I would request you is, this is a very important policy, both from the point of prelims, mains, as well as an interview. And even for your essay writing, it's very useful. Some might be thinking that I'm still in second PU or in the first year of degree, and by the time I write, this policy might have lost its relevance. So why should I read it? So I feel at least for next 10 to 15 years, this policy is going to be very relevant, and questions directly and indirectly are going to be coming up in the exams. So I request all of you to go back and read this. This is not a very big document. It will help you to understand the basics of facts, and a lot of facts are there in this which you need, will be very useful for you in the prelims also. And whenever you read some articles on NEP in the newspaper or magazines, this your basic knowledge will help you to analyze those analysis in a better way. Okay, with this we'll start national education policy. So what I want to cover in this 1 hour is these 5 segments. First, let us talk about why we need a new policy, then key highlights. What I saw was, I was going through your answers, what you people had written on advantages and disadvantages of NEP. And I found that some have confused between highlights and the analysis, facts and analysis. So I want to talk about highlights. Then I'll go to the 4 specific areas I have chosen for today, which are very important, and questions may separately come. They may not just ask you entirely as a NEP, but inside that they may pick up few topics and they may ask you questions. So, and based on the answers what you have written, I would like you give you few tips on how to answer these questions in the exams, and I'll give you 1 or 2 assignment questions which you can, you need not submit this to anybody. You can solve it yourself and see how you are progressing. Okay. So starting with the need for new policy, there was already a policy in 1986, National Education Policy, which was going quite well. What was the need for having a new policy? Can somebody give an answer? Kushal, can you tell me, like, what was the need for a new policy? Is not there? Adarsh, anyone else? Kavya, are you there? Can you hear me? Nalini, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible. You're audible, ma'am. Okay, you're audible.
Okay. Vidish is here. Can you answer? You tell whatever right or wrong is not a thing. Let us know why. What is your perspective? Why do you think there was a new policy which came now?
Ma'am, I think there is too much rigidity in our education policy. The previous one, well, people can choose their own subject from, I think, class 8 or something. From class 8, correct? No, ma'am. People can choose what they like, they want to pursue with their careers. So if they start early, they can understand better in the future.
Okay.
I personally believe that.
Yeah. See, what has happened was, the policy which came earlier was in 1986. That time, it was during that time, it was, as you know, it was before LPG era, post liberalization and globalization era, where our aspirations was very less. Even if a person knows to read and write, government was happy with it. But today, what will we do with the people who just knows to read and write? It is of no use today. Today, if we want to become a superpower, if we want to compete in the international era, the kind of people we are going to develop makes a lot of difference. So this particular national education policy today is going to have those aspirations of the people to harness the new skills so that our growing demographic dividend will be better utilized, right? So if you see, say suppose earlier what used to happen is somebody's music, he's very interested in music and he sings well, that was very sufficient for him. But today, if he knows music, that is not sufficient. He should know the computer language, computers. Otherwise, he can't upload his videos, he can't design something. So all this has become so much integrated that having a knowledge of multiple subjects is a very key necessity in the today's world. So that was the main reason government has come up with the new education policy, which will have which will meet the international standards. So the key highlights of this policy is, first of all, we want to key highlights of this policy. We will not talk I'll not give you the sermon on the entire policy paper, what all it includes. We'll just highlight few key points and then we'll move on to the specific areas, right? So first of all, the main key point is government wants to increase its enrollment ratio, both at the primary level, even at the higher education level. And secondly, present 10+2 model has been changed into 15 years model. So we are concentrating on the, what was left out was the 3 to 6 years of gap. Because till now government was not interested in bringing in this 3 to 6 years into the education system. There were Anganwadi schools, but it was not taken very seriously. So now we are bringing in these children also into the school program. And this is very much important in the present scenario, because especially even in the light of Right to Education Act. Because in the Right to Education Act, presently we are saying it's only 6 to 14 years we are focusing. So now if we say even 3 to 6 years is important, then I have to modify accordingly my right to education also and include these children into the ambit of right to education. And if we see in the urban areas, children of who are going to private school, lot of stress is being laid on pre-KGs. The 3 years of what they do, LKG and UKG, there is a lot of stress for them to study and learn the language and as well as the maths. But when it comes to the government schools, the government is not giving a lot of stress on this. So there is a gap between the study between the on the one side the school children who are studying in the government schools and also on the private schools. So in order to bridge this gap, we have brought in that even the 3 to 6 years has to be included in the curriculum. And another important factor, key point is what we are doing is the board exams. Though we are continuing with the board exams at the 10th and 12th, we are going away with the rote learning method of writing the exams, and we are more focusing on the checking the core competencies. But even though we do not know how exactly we are going to implement it, this is what is there in the government's agenda. And another important, all of you must be knowing on the vocational training, which I'll be covering a bit later in detail. And in higher education, we are bringing the multiple exit points. And many of you had written in answers saying that multiple exit point is a disadvantage for an education. How many of you agree with it? Can somebody tell me rather what could be the advantages of multiple exit points? Just whatever comes to your mind, what would be the advantage if some person quits the course in 1 year or at the 2 years of his degree instead of completing 4 years? What could be the advantage?
Ma'am, excuse me, ma'am. My name is Sunag.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So the advantage is that nowadays, ma'am, before when they were doing a degree, a lot of girls or boys who didn't have proper background, that is financial background for completing the degree, they had to drop midway. And dropping midway, it would have been such a disadvantage that they couldn't get any job anywhere.
Yes.
They couldn't meet that qualification. But now what has happened is the new education policy, even for first year dropping and even second year dropping, third year dropping also, you'll get a degree certificate, which can be valid and it will help us to get some advantage over getting a job.
Thank you, Sunaga. You have rightly pointed out what are the advantages. It's not exactly a disadvantage as many of you have thought. There are many, though there are disadvantages, but majorly we can see it is an advantage as compared to the early. Earlier, what used to happen is somebody doesn't want to do engineering. Many of them do engineering by forceful. And by end of second year, they feel engineering is not their cup of tea. If they drop, then entire 2 years would have been wasted for them. So, but presently in the present system, government, because till now government never recognized a 2 years if somebody has done. Only if he has completed entire four-year degree, then only they were recognizing with a certificate. So presently, since government is recognizing it, it will be an advantage for students, even if they drop out, either because they don't like the course or because of the financial burden, it will be useful for them to find a job. And moreover, now we have actually moved into directly from agriculture to service sector, and there is a lot of void in our industrial sector. And we need a lot of people in this industrial sector to fit in. So where do we get these people? So definitely we need people with a diploma or other certifications who can fit into these, because government now is talking about Atmanirbharata, or it is Make in India. All this can be successful if we have people with multiple certifications who can choose whatever the field they want to go. Okay. So with this, we'll go to the 4 specific areas which I would like to cover. We'll do an analysis. We will not just go through the facts. So the first one is entry of foreign universities in India. So can someone tell me like what could be the advantages of foreign universities in India? Yeah, please tell me, Vidish.
Ma'am, they'll apply
ma'am.
their culture and etc. Like their
May I know who is speaking?
education system. Ma'am, I'm Jahnavi K, ma'am.
Yeah, tell me, Janu.
They'll apply their education rules and systems on our in our country, ma'am, so that our values and all, it will be like changed and it will be completely different and it will be completely converted, like slowly it will be converting into their kind of education, ma'am. There are advantages of this also, and as well as some disadvantages due to this, ma'am.
Any advantage? One advantage, can you tell me?
Advantage in the sense are
We
like
don't have to go to foreign countries and study.
yes, ma'am. This exactly I was going to say about it, and we can learn like our accent.
I think it got broke. Okay, so foreign universities. So this NEP 2020 for the first time has given a green signal for entering of the foreign universities. Even earlier, the foreign universities were collaborating with India, but they never established the independent universities. So this is the first time they are operating independently without collaborating with any of the existing Indian universities. So how will that help Indian students? So first and foremost, it will reduce the brain drain, because government sends so much on the degree education, especially on these IITs. But these students, once they finish their education, they will write the exams, GRE or TOEFL, and they'll start moving to outside. And once they finish their job, they're going to settle there. So this is one of the ways, if those universities are coming to India, then this brain drain can be stopped. Secondly, from the gender aspect, it's very relevant, because many of the girl students will not be allowed to go to foreign countries. Parents will not allow. Either they don't want to spend on financially more on the girl children, or secondly, because because of the socio-cultural norms, they don't want to send it to any foreign places. So if these universities are coming to India, this gender gap in higher education is going to reduce considerably. And next thing is they have a lot of curriculum, because presently we are saying 100 top universities of the world are going to enter into India. So these 10 universities, 100 universities like Harvard, Cambridge, all these universities, they have been developing their curriculum for last more than 100 years. And those richness in curriculum, their richness in professors, teaching methodologies will bring to India, and a lot of students can get benefited. And our dream of increasing the enrollment ratio in higher education to 50% can be increased by the entry of foreign universities. But there is a flip side also to entry of foreign universities. So the first thing is just because they're coming here, that doesn't guarantee the quality, because government has to put in rules and regulations for their operating, and we do not know to what extent they will be ready to comply with the Indian rules and regulations. Secondly, how these foreign universities operate is like very different. Like they have an endowment funds which they collect it from the corporates. MNCs in say suppose there is an Harvard, they'll collect the money from the private institutions or from their alumnus, and from that endowment funds they run the university. But when they come to India, they cannot bring those endowment funds. Just like how MNCs invest their money here, they cannot do, universities cannot do that. So they have to raise funds independently in India. So what is the way? The first and foremost way is to collect fees from the students. So this will increase the burden on the students, and students may have to start taking loans, so the debt will increase. So there is a problem with this. And secondly, how much government is willing to go away with the taxes for these universities. And again, we are saying that they cannot take back their profit what they earn from Indian universities. So all these are going to affect the foreign universities in India. Okay. Next, we will talk about 3 to 6 years of education and how it's going to impact Anganwadi workers. So if we see Anganwadi workers till date, what they were doing was, it was more like they were taking care of the children. If parents, both of them are working, if both of them are laborers, there is nobody to take care at home, they used to leave their children at the Anganwadi and they used to go for and work. And there was absolutely no expectation from these Anganwadi teachers that they should teach them some language. Even though they were teaching, there was no restrictions on them that these things has to be covered, syllabus has to be covered, no such things. And Anganwadi teachers were chosen from their localities, and they were not very highly educated and all. And they were just like a caretakers, they were handling it. Now what we are saying, now we are making 3 to 6 years is a very important for the education. We are saying these Anganwadi workers will be given a specific training of 6 months of training, and they will be putting them into the job roles. So now we have to see how these Anganwadi workers are going to be coping up with the new responsibilities. What we have seen all these years is many times Anganwadi workers goes on dharnas. They keep stressing on government that they have to pay them the better wages, because their wages are very low paid, and the work what we are giving, all miscellaneous work we are dumping on them, and we are asking them to do all the work along with taking care of the children. But presently, if this new system comes up, they have to be detached from doing all these other extra works what they are presently doing, and they have to concentrate fully on building in the foundational literacy and numeracy what the government wants them to do it. So we need to check whether they are really empowered to do that. And other thing what is very disheartening is these Anganwadi workers is very low paid. All of them are mostly are women, and they're very lowly paid. And government, when it fixes, like even for a labor class, it's fixing this should be the basic salary and all. it has absolutely done nothing for the welfare of these Anganwadi workers. So it also raises a doubt whether we are taking them for granted, the women labor, just because it's a women labor, whether we are taking for them granted and we are asking them to do all kinds of work. So, and this Anganwadi workers, rightly remunerating them and rightly giving them a proper education is very important if we want to make a strong basic education for the children. So we need to wait and watch how they are going to do this, how they are going to formulate a policy for improving 3 to 6 years, because till now it was not on the government agenda to focus on this age group. Next, very important is a multilingualistic approach. Can somebody tell me the features of from perspective of language, what changes have been brought in national education policy?
Ma'am, hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
This is Sunak speaking.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, multilingualistic approach matlab, it's something like all the languages can be, all the subjects can be taught in all languages. The regional language, the state language, and the mother language.
Okay.
The
No,
student can
how will it-
understand the syllabus very easily because of multilingualistic approach. And
What are the negative aspects of introducing it?
The base in English will be spoiled, ma'am. Usually,
Ma'am,
what
who is
English we
speaking?
study, I am Nishat, ma'am.
Yeah.
The English base which we get during our childhood years is which will help us during our senior years. But when this multilingual approach is given in the school days, the base of English will be spoiled, and that will affect the children's psychology in the senior years, ma'am. It will. I mean to say is they will face difficulties in their future years.
Yeah, right.
Exactly, ma'am.
because of multilingualistic approach, students will not make a try of learning English, and they will think that they can understand in their own languages, and they feel like English is not required when they can learn in their own aspect.
Usually, the children understand when we explain the mother tongue. So, this understand properly the subjects.
Yeah. So they have brought in a 3-language policy, and they are not, earlier last year they were imposing Hindi, but now they are saying they can choose any of the 2 Indian languages out of 3 languages. So apart from English, they can't learn any other foreign languages. But presently what was happening was, in some high-end schools, they were not teaching Kannada, but they were teaching German and French to the children. So, so this will get stopped if we are emphasizing that there should be 2 Indian languages which should be learned. But states like Karnataka will not face a problem with 3-language policy, because anyway we have adopted Hindi as a language and we can go ahead with that. But what about the states like Tamil Nadu, where they're showing a lot of resistance for Hindi? We have to see. And also the North Indian states, because North Indian states already Hindi is there and English will be there. So what will be the 3rd language which can be taught? Because, and the one of the options for them to teach is either Sanskrit, most probably, or like the languages like Bhojpuri or any local languages, which is not very commonly used. But there is a problem with using a Sanskrit also, because Sanskrit, even if you learn Sanskrit, what will you do with learning Sanskrit? Because it's not a language which will be spoken in our day-to-day life. You don't find people who can converse you with that particular language. It's almost a dead language now. So just for the sake of learning, you will be learning it, and after some years, you may totally forget. So we need to see which languages each state can adopt based upon, say, suppose if it's Maharashtra, they can easily adopt Kannada, English, Marathi, and Hindi. So now the choice is for the particular states to adopt whatever the language based upon the individuals, and government should not force any language on any people. So this, on the other hand, will also create a more pressure on the government side also, because it has to create more number of teachers. If somebody wants in the same school, somebody wants to learn Kannada, somebody wants to learn Urdu, then you have to want to have a multiple teachers for that. So that will create an additional burden on the government, where the government should be equipped to handle this kind of a situation. And secondly, today we are seeing almost English is a synonymous with the employability. Can we imagine going to a software company without knowing an English knowledge? It's totally impossible, right? So if we don't know the basic English to converse in English, our employment opportunities are going to drastically come down. I may learn till 10th, 12th or degree, I can finish in my mother tongue, but what next? So my opportunities are going to be hindered if I do that. And I always expect that I have a, whether me or my parents, everybody wants to have a English language. So then why is the government stressing so much on language? Because we are just seeing from an urban point of view, we are seeing yes, English is very important. But think of somebody who is in any sociology or anthropology students here. Yeah, Nishat is there. Okay. So if you see from, so if you have studied tribals about rural background and all, we understand that if somebody who is in a Jharkhand, if he is in a tribal area, I bring him and put him into an English medium school, can they learn? The whole purpose of education will be lost if I force somebody who has never been exposed to the outside world to learn some foreign language. Right? That is the reason why government is stressing so much on Indian language, because government's agenda is not just to focus on the urban students, but also it wants to be a more inclusive education which it wants to impart. And there is also if you see, on one hand we are encouraging foreign universities to come to India, and on other side we are saying I'm fine with any kind of language. So, but do we think that foreign universities are going to accept the regional languages in their curriculum? Definitely not, right? So definitely they'll expect that people have a hold on English language if they want to pursue their higher education. So actually it's like, then if in higher education I want to take my regional languages, then I don't have any option but to choose some Indian universities, and my aspirations to study in foreign universities will be completely hampered. And language as a medium of instruction. And one more welcome step is, till now, even if somebody was interested by their own will to study in regional languages, there was absolutely no material which was available to them. But now government has come up with various schemes where they want to develop all kinds of materials with the regional languages, which is a very important, good step. And the other thing which is most talked about today is on the vocational training. How many of you have received vocational training in your school or college anytime? Anyone feels that it will be useful, vocational training? Panchami, can you tell me why? Why do you feel vocational training is important?
Ma'am, we had work experience as a subject in our high school, ma'am. In that, we used to learn the stitching classes. We had stitching classes in that subject, ma'am.
Okay.
It will help us a lot because if the student is not able to go to any job, or if a girl is married in the earlier age, at least she can sit in her home and do the stitching activities, and she can earn somewhat, no, ma'am. If her family does not allow to go to other jobs, she can at least earn.
Yeah, right. So as Panchami said, say suppose she has done stitching profession, it doesn't mean she has to become she has to choose the same profession. Tomorrow she can become an entrepreneur, she can run some cloth industries, something else. And this knowledge of hers, practical knowledge, will help her. But there are many economists who are opposing vocational training because they're feeling that it is going to start again with a caste-based and class-based society in India. Because most of the time we have bifurcated our job with our caste. Upper caste will do this particular kind of job, and the jobs has always been assigned to particular castes. So they are feeling that it's going to further harness this class-based society and also the caste-based societies. But we see there is not much of truth in that presently, and vocational training is very important. All of you will agree with me that vocational training is the need of the hour, because say suppose I finished my engineering. Only at the age of 22 years, I will be searching for a job. Till then, I'm totally clueless which are the areas I'm interested in, where I can go. And once I finish my engineering, the only thing I keep searching is for software job, because that is the only thing I know. I can't even think of anything else to do it. But if I have been given an occasional training, if I had new electrician work or if I knew carpentry, I had more avenues to work, and I could have chosen many other things. Right? So occasional training will open up the doors, and it is very important today, because we need in the industrialization is what we need to want to achieve in the next 20 to 30 years. And without having an occasional training, we cannot accommodate this much of big population, everybody in the service industry. So we need, where else can we accommodate? We can't even accommodate in agriculture. It's totally saturated, and service needs very high-end knowledge, and opportunities are also less. So in between the industry, this thing is the very important, and that is where we need to focus upon. And hence it's very important that we impart vocational training, because I think as per some statistics, it was said only 5% of the people are given vocational training presently in India, which is very low, and we need to increase this, and we need to make them more employable. The only way is to make it mandatory and impart vocational education. The another training which government is talking more is on having the coding skills. I think from standard 5, they have to start learning coding. And at this also, there is a lot of reservations, like why such small kids should learn coding. So it is not that with an intention that all government wants to transfer every person into a software job. It's not the government's intention why it is going to teach coding. There is other different reasons why we feel coding is an important. Because now we see that many jobs, everything has become like artificial intelligence, machine learning. These are the new technologies which are coming up. And everybody, if they know coding, they can easily fit into these job roles easily. And also, even from the development of the child's perspective, coding is very important, because coding is nothing but, if engineers are there in this group, they understand it is nothing but a logic. It's more of a critical thinking. You just decision making. All these are going to be developed in a better way if the students knows how to do the coding. Because if you see the algorithm, what is that? If this is the condition, then I'll take this decision. If this doesn't match, then I'll take some other decision. So coding will not only help in just in the software. There are different roles. Even if you become a civil servant, what you do day in and day out is a decision making. Based upon the facts, I'll be taking a decision. So this coding will help you in a wide variety of reasons. And somebody, if they are good, then they can take up the new job roles, like what are the upcoming areas there, like data analytics, data science, artificial intelligence. IoT is very important, and it's the latest technology, and people can easily fit in these job roles. So these are the 4 areas I wanted to speak. Apart from that, any other things, any doubts you have? If this is done, I can tell you like how to write answers, because I had gone through some of your answers and I would like to give a comment so that it will help you to improve your writing skills. Fine.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Myself, Mohammad Ajish, ma'am.
Yeah, tell me.
Ma'am, when you're explaining about vocational training, ma'am, you said that economists are opposing this one, ma'am. So why, what is the reason?
As I said, this is going to create class-based society and caste-based society. Say, suppose tomorrow you are a civil servant, Muhammad. Will you insist your children to do vocational training? No, no. You, as per your standards, you will say no, let him become an engineer or a doctor. We are not interested in learning the carpentry work or an electrical work. But on the other hand, somebody who is from a lower middle class or from the lower class, they don't have any other option but to go for these kinds of training. So again, there will be a class divide. Somebody who was poor will remain poor. Somebody who is a rich will remain a rich. So that is the reason economists are saying no. And another thing is caste-based society. If you see that each caste has been associated with the jobs, with the work that they do. Somebody who does like carpentry, they have a caste name for that. So they will be inclined to go into the same roles and they will remain lifelong. A carpenter's son may remain as a carpenter. He will not have the more avenues to explore. So that is the reason economists are opposing it. But see, as of now, we have only 5% of vocational training. Even in the foreign countries, vocational training is very compulsory. These are all just an apprehensions. So we have come far away moving from caste-based and class-based society, and it's definitely going to help. So it's only like next 10 years, once people start getting accustomed to this new kind of trainings, I think all these apprehensions will subside on their own.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm Vidish. Ma'am, one question.
Yeah.
Do you think that the foreign universities should be limited?
Yeah, definitely it should be limited, because it doesn't mean everything, every foreign universities are not good universities. There also it can be a junk universities like in India. Because the students might not be knowing to differentiate between a very good universities and a low class universities. And if government is not taking initiatives to bifurcate them and take appropriate measures, unnecessarily students will be losing on the financial front also, and there will be no proper education also for them. Because that's why the government has said that only top 100 universities will be asked to enter into India. So universities like Harvard, Oxford, those kinds of universities we can expect. And there is another one thing I forgot to mention in foreign universities is with the professors. Whether these foreign universities are going to bring those foreign professors, or are they going to manage with the Indian professors, is the another question which we need to see. Because if it is again the Indian professors itself, then whether they're willing to pay the salaries which they would have paid the foreign professors, or will they reduce the payments, then the quality is going to depend upon that factor also. Fine. Now we'll go to, I'll just give you a few tips on writing your answers. First and foremost, I had seen one or two people using the quotes in the beginning and at the end of the answers. So please don't do that. And don't waste your time also to find out the quotes. In the course of your reading, if you come across some quotes, it's fine, you know it, but deliberately don't go behind finding the appropriate quotes. If Abdul Kalam has said something, I just want to bring it is an education topic, I want to bring, whether relevant or not relevant, it's going to spoil your answers. Okay. So only if it is relevant, you just add it, otherwise leave it. Nobody expects you to write give a quote in your answers. Okay, second one, what I saw is somebody was using different colors of pencils. This is all simple, but I just want to tell, because in exams, you will not have time to use different colors. Now, since you had a lot of time to write your answers, you might have used it. So stick to one color pen to write your answers. Okay. And thirdly, what I noticed was introduction. See, your introduction should not be 10 to 15% of your word. Every answer in UPSC has a word limit. They'll not allow you to write any number of pages you like. So introduction forms a very important part of your answer writing, and your answer, that introduction should not cross 15%, 10 to 15% of your word limit. Say, suppose if you are writing a 200 words answer, it should be around 20 to 30 words of introduction. Okay, I saw some were writing like 1 page, 1.5 page of an introduction, and that is also like, it was not related to this particular topic. It was related to the someone was speaking about 1986 education policy, which committee was formed, all those things, which was like which was not relevant to the present 2020 policy. So when you are writing, stick to the point. If it is national education policy, what you can speak about, either present education policy, why government wants to bring a need, what was the need. So that thing you can speak in the introduction, and directly you come to your question. So it was advantages and disadvantages. So put a heading as advantage, write what are the advantages, and write disadvantages and write. There is no need even to write the key features before writing the advantages if it is just a 200 words. But if it is an essay where you write more than 1,000 words and all, then maybe you can structure it in that way. But when you're writing for 200 words or 300 words, it's always better to come to the answer directly. And I think there was some confusion between the highlights and also between the advantages and disadvantages. So here I would like to bring, there is some concept called as knowledge, skills and attitude. So knowledge, if we have to interpret it into our civil service, we can say knowledge in prelims, skills in mains, and attitude in your interview. So since this is an answer writing, I would say, so knowledge is nothing but whatever facts you have gathered. So those facts will be tested in your prelims. And in mains, the skills, what are the skills? 2 skills mainly will be tested, your writing skills and your critical analysis skills. So you have to exhibit these 2 skills in your writing. So together with knowledge and your skills forms your attitude, which will be tested in your interview. So when it comes to whenever you are writing, reading something, say you're reading some newspaper, in back of your mind, it should always be there whether what is the analysis they're making, whether they're speaking in favor of the particular topic or they're speaking against of it. And you should keep trying to bifurcate. Okay, this is a fact. Okay, this is the analysis. These people are doing it. So that will help you when you are also writing some answers. It will help you to bifurcate your answers into an fact-based and also the analysis-based. If the question demands you to write a fact, you write a fact. Otherwise, you combine your fact in such a way that it will form your analysis. So, like for you to give an example, somebody had written that Bal Bhavans are have been established, but that is a fact. But what is your analysis? By established Bal Bhavan, what will happen? How it will be benefited? So that will be your analysis. So 2 crore students will be brought to a system is a fact. But what is your analysis? How will it help? If you bring these many people into an higher education, how will it help in India's growth story? That is your analysis. That is how you have to do it. So from now on, whenever you read newspaper, you try to analyze what they're trying to say. Because any article you read, they'll be doing a very good amount of analysis, which will help for you to write your answers. Okay. So from my side, that's it. Last thing is, I would like to give you 2 questions, so you can answer this. No need to submit to anybody. You can take a photo of this. No need to write it down. You can write it in 250 words. Based on whatever I had given you the tips, based upon that, you can write answers to this. And you can do the peer review. You can give it to your friend and ask them to review it. Because usually it's very easy to find fault with others than ourselves. So when you give it to somebody, they'll find you where all you're doing a mistake so that you can rectify it. Can you see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions on writing? Anything you want to know? So when you write answers, don't wait for some teachers or professors to correct your answers. So you do it in among yourselves and see where you stand in writing answers. Yeah, Panchami raised the hand. Any doubt you have, you can ask.
Yes, ma'am, I have a doubt, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, according to see, they are saying that even the high school level students, they are also getting the opportunities to choose stream which they like.
Yeah.
Is that right, ma'am?
Yes, it's better to choose.
Do you think they'll have mindset of choosing the for their future in that earlier?
No, whatever they like. See, if there is opportunity for every subject, then why not let them choose whatever they like? And it is not like actually now it's actually a wrong system. If I in first PUC, if I do choose science or if I choose arts, I don't have any other way to come out of it. I have to do science, I have to do engineering, or I have to do medical. And always science is seen as if something great, and other subjects are seen at the lower footing. So now, since government is allowing us to take multiple subjects, so and it is not rigid also, they can change later on. If they don't like it, then they can change it. So they can learn some language and then they can learn some subject and later on they can change it. And one more thing I think we forgot to mention is on this compartmentalization of education.
webinar, you just listen webinar and
Compartmentalization, because as I said earlier, science will be always lifelong, will be a science student, arts will be always an art student. But somebody who is in sports, they can't be good at science. That is what we have declared ourselves. So now that kind of stigma has been gone. So person can choose extracurricular and curricular and can balance it out. Writing answers, any doubts? Yeah, Vidish has raised the hand. Go ahead, Vidish.
Ma'am, does innovative thinking helps us to write answers more in a better way? Will enhance our skills? Will it enhance our skills?
Yes, innovative thinking is what is all required. If you just present some facts, nobody will be interested. All facts will be available in internet. No? Then why should somebody ask you to present them? So if they ask facts, then it's all again, you just remember something and give. Facts, whenever you are doing some innovative analysis, use your facts and then based upon that, you do your analysis. And you need not write hi-fi English language and all. With a simple language, if you come up with a new kinds of points. Yeah, one more thing I wanted to say is when you're writing your answers, don't stick to one single point and keep on writing upon that on all 200 words. So some people say, for example, have given this question of foreign university. What they'll do is they'll just take the brain drain and they'll just write 200 words on brain drain. So that will not fetch you the marks. At least you should bring in 2 or 5 different aspects to that. Only then that will fetch you more marks than going in depth in one particular heading.
Ma'am, yes. Then we can even write on of our point of view also, ma'am. What should be
improvised? You have to write your point of view, yeah. Yes, you can write.
Thank you, ma'am.
That is what is expected. Actually, you have to write your own point, your own analysis, what you have done, because you will be studying day in and day out. You are studying so much. Because of that, you might have gathered your own analysis. So come up with new analysis, what others might have not written. That will help you to gain more marks than others. You say, suppose if you are an anthropology student, you can bring in those concepts in your education, how like tribal, just like how I told, how it will affect tribal students. So all those things you can bring in.
Ma'am,
Yeah,
ma'am, I'm Basaya, ma'am.
yeah, Basaya, tell me.
Ma'am, when in which age they teach vocational courses, ma'am?
If I'm right, I think from 8th standard.
8th standard, ma'am.
You just confirm it. Just you please go through national. I think it is only 66 pages document, which all of you have, because in the beginning when I asked, not many have read. It's very important you people read it, because a lot of facts are there. Like there is one word called Parak, and there is something called Indian Institute of Translation and Interpretation. All these are very important for your prelims point of view. You can't just depend upon some magazines to give you these informations. So better you go through it once. It's very relevant.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, like how to become IAS or how to get selected for IAS in the first attempt itself?
That what are you studying now? See, there is nobody is forcing you to get through in first attempt itself, and don't have take too much of stress thinking that I should get it in first attempt. It's fine, first attempt, second attempt, it is fine, because considering the vastness of this subject, it's very difficult. Only few of them can get through at the first attempt itself, but there is actually no need to get disheartened, and there is no fixed formula on how to get in first attempt. Even if you read 24/7, there is a no guarantee that you will be getting through first attempt. If you get through, it's well and good. Otherwise, totally not an issue. All of us have studied for 3 attempts, 4 attempts, only then we have gone through. And writing more attempts also has an advantage. You will get more informed, you will become more down to earth, you know what are the practical difficulties, and we start respecting the others who have cleared these exams taking more attempts. So maybe our ego also comes down if we have taken more attempts. So totally don't worry about it, just read it, put in your best efforts, everything will be taken care. Okay, then Nalini, can we stop at this stage?
Yes, ma'am. So, Upendra sir, I just wanted to talk. Upendra sir, you available?
Yes, I am available.
Yes, sir.
I will go for vote of thanks.
Would you like to talk? Okay. So does any student wants to any question from any student, so that you can raise your hand and I can unmute you.
Any last questions?
Okay, one second.
Hello.
Yes. Mahal can talk.
Yes, ma'am. Ask you.
Yeah.
Hello. Ma'am, are you listening me?
Yeah. Tell me.
Audible.
Oh, ma'am, how can we start a preparation after 10th?
Come again?
Ma'am, how to start a preparation after the 10th?
Okay, what are you studying now?
Ma'am, I'm in class 10th.
Okay. So if you're in class 10th, first and foremost, what you have to do is start reading the newspapers.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, whatever of your choice, either Hindu, Times of India, anything you can start reading. And at that same time, you finish your NCERT textbooks also. Maybe along with your PU, you can finish your NCERT textbooks. And keep reading, like magazines. You take any nowadays, a lot of civil service magazines are available. You can read them. And one more thing is, So answer writing and all, maybe it will take initially, immediately if you write your answers, the quality will not be there. So don't worry, don't get scared that you don't have the writing skills. At least if you read continuously for 3-4 months, then your writing skills will improve. Okay, directly don't jump into writing and then feel bad that your writing skills are not coming down. So since you're still in 10th, you start preparing first, start continuously reading newspapers every day, and no need to prepare elaborate notes out of newspapers. Maybe key points, you can just note it down and you can just revise them. And for people who are already in final year or have completed and studying, taking full time for civil service, you read a magazine called as Economic and Political Weekly. That will help you because you might be already reading some civil service magazines and all, or Outlook and all, but this Economic and Political Weekly will give you very good viewpoints, different viewpoints, which will be help you in answer writing. Because these authors, they're really researchers, they're scholars, they have done a lot of many years of research, and they have, based upon that, they will be writing their articles. So you will get easily, it is like a spoon feeding for you. If you read, you will get their perspective and you can use them in your answer writing, and your quality will improve.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I'm Rakesh. Ma'am,
Yeah,
Department
Rakesh.
of Social Justice and Empowerment Government is there, no, ma'am? From
Yes.
there, they have given like a free IAS and IPS coaching for OBC.
Okay. Okay. I didn't get your question fully. Rakesh?
Site. Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Hello, Rakesh. Rakesh,
sir.
this is not a relevant question to ask Soumya madam. Please. Huh? That is
Yes,
social
sir,
justice
yes,
and
sir.
empowerment. You can ask about us. We will tell you how to go for this. Huh? Please. You ask anything to related to civil service examinations.
Okay.
Yes, or this new education policy. Today's webinar.
So anybody else? Any other questions? Please raise your hand. Anybody else?
Yeah, we can wind up the program. Where is Rubina madam?
Okay, one student is raising hand, ma'am. Can I?
Yes, unmute Rubina also.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah. May know
Ma'am,
who's
there are
who's speaking?
1,600. I'm Amrut, ma'am.
Yeah, Amrit.
Ma'am, there are 1,600 languages in India, and will the government be ready to provide like the teachers to teach in all these languages across India?
See, even if there are 1,600 languages, not all languages are spoken by a larger section of population. If you say in Kannada itself, there are so many dialects, and it's definitely it is not a feasible for government to have a separate teachers, and even students might not be interested. If there is a Tulu or Konkani, how many are actually interested? It depends. So in a school, if they have only 5% or 10%, then government may fix. If more than 10% of the students are interested in a particular language, only then teachers will be available. Or they have to do the pooling of teachers. The same teachers will visit 3 or 4 schools and they keep teaching the language. So that could be one feasible solution. Out of these 1,000+ languages, not all languages are spoken by a major chunk of population.
Okay, ma'am.
So
Yeah.
somebody is asking
Ma'am,
how to prepare in civil service and studying degree. It is all the same. Maybe since it was 10th, I gave her less intense way of studying. But since you are already in degree, you have to start studying very intensively. Apart from your classes, at least 5 to 6 years, you have to put in hard efforts. You have to read, apart from NCERT, you have to start reading the prescribed textbooks, which most of them are reading for civil service. Prescribed textbooks will be there. You have to take them and you have to read them. And you have to start practicing your answers also simultaneously. And you have to start practicing your objective type questions. You have to start answering them. Yeah, Nalini, you can close it.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, my last question. Can we know more about your work experience as DC Income Tax?
Yeah, I joined the civil in 2011, and I have almost 8+ years of experience. And all these 8 years I have worked in Bangalore itself. So that is one of the advantages of choosing central service as against the all India service. So I was born and brought up in Bangalore. So luckily I got an opportunity to work in Bangalore. So in these 8 years, I have worked only in income tax department, and within that I have worked in different capacities. Like I have worked in corporate charge, where we are assessing the companies, and we have an investigation department where we do, in your layman terms, we say call as raids. So those search and seizure actions, what we do, I have handled there. And there is something called as international taxation, where we do the assessment of international taxpayers. Then I was working in CPC. If somebody are filing returns, you might be knowing what is CPC. All our returns goes there to CPC for getting processed. So I have worked there. So it has given me even though it was a single department, it has given me a very wide experience. And presently from government has sponsored me to study Masters in Public Policy. So I'm pursuing it in IIMB, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. So this will give me, because already I have completed 8 years and my promotions are due next year. So studying this will help me to, in the future, any policy related decisions we have to take, or if I want to go to departments where on deputations, this will help me in doing those things. I cleared it in 4 attempts, 4th attempt. During that time, for a general category, it was a 4 attempts. So that was my last attempt. And I had written simultaneously my KS also, and I had selected, I had got 3rd rank in that also. But later on, like even Upendra Shetty sir had suggested me to go to central service than in the state government. So I had chosen that and had left my AC job in state government. So don't worry about number of attempts. That is the reason why government is also giving the number of attempts. So whether somebody clears in 1st attempt or clears in 4th or 5th attempt doesn't make any difference once you get into the service. So don't worry much about it. Yeah, Nalini, you can close now.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable time enlightening tomorrow's bureaucrats about future and impacts of national education policy. And now I would request Rubina ma'am to deliver a vote of thanks. Rubina ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here. Am I audible?
Please.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay. Good evening to one and all. Firstly, I'd like to thank the management for giving me an opportunity to present the vote of thanks. Firstly, I'd like to thank Ma'am Soumya, IRS 2011, who with her immense and very knowledgeable and experience has enlightened us on NEP 2020. I hope the students have acquired some of the tips given by her. I would also, we hope to hear on more such topics like in the beginning, Nalini ma'am has told you that you are interested in gender related topics. So we'd like to hear more about that in near future and more on such important issues that are coming in India. And I'd like the management also again to hold such inspiring and knowledgeable seminars more in the near future. So I'd like to once again thank all the faculties, the students and management who has taken the time out to attend the seminar, and especially most importantly, thank you, Ma'am Soumya, for this wonderful talk. Thank you.
Thank you. If you have any topics in mind, if you feel it's important, you can let us know, the Upendra Shetty sir. We can take it up if it's useful. 1 hour we can do it. It's not
Yes,
an issue.
ma'am. I got to know you're interested in more topics like that. We'd like to hear from you more and have an interactive session on those topics. So we'd like to, we'll let you know, we'll discuss with the management, Upendra sir and Pragati ma'am about this, and we'll let you know, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you, Soumya madam. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.